Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Anime Vanguards, the game that's giving anime defenders a serious run for its money. If you've played both, you know Anime Vanguards looks pretty similar, but it's got some key upgrades that make it stand out. One of the biggest differences, the unique passive abilities each character has, which can totally change how they perform in battle. This makes picking the right units way trickier, but also a lot more fun. In this video, we're diving into the Anime Vanguards unit tier list. With all the different passives and abilities, it can be tough to figure out which units really shine. But don't worry, we've got you covered. Stick around as we break down the best of the best and help you build the ultimate team to dominate the battlefield. I'm quickly moving on to the video and I'm ranking units in Anime Vanguards. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of tier list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching.
A very small portion of the audience is subscribed to the channel. Please don't forget to subscribe if you like these types of videos. Thanks.
The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Gari, Luffo, Mimi Psychic, Naruto, Roku, Rurukyo, Uluvukyo, Shinzi, and Sasuke. Alright, so let's talk about the Anime Vanguard's D tier units. And let's be real, these are the ones you want to avoid if you're looking to build a strong lineup. I'm talking about units like Mimi Psychic, Gari, Luffo, Naruto, Roku, Rukyo, Shinzi, and Sasuke. Now, don't get me wrong, these units can be fun to use for a while, but they just don't bring enough to the table compared to the alternatives. Whether you're focusing on damage, utility, or anything else, they're just not cutting it. Honestly, investing in these units is like trying to put together a puzzle with a few pieces missing. They just don't fit the picture. The truth is, these D tier units are really just placeholders until you get some of the more solid picks from your summons. They don't offer enough value for the resources you'll pour into them, and you'll quickly find yourself wishing you had gone for something better. You'll get at least some decent units after a few dozen summons, so don't sweat it if you start with any of these guys. It's all about making sure your lineup is filled with units that can actually carry you through the tougher stages of the game. So save yourself the trouble and keep your eyes on those A tier and S tier units. They're the ones that'll really help you shine. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Genas, Genitsu, Inosake, Karem Chilled, Kakashi, Okoron Turbo, Piclio, Psycho Spirit and Medium, and Zion Burdalion. Alright, let's talk about some of the units in the C tier in Anime Vanguards. These aren't the go-to choices for most of your runs, but hey, they still have their moments. If you're feeling experimental or trying to shake things up, some of these units can bring some interesting playstyle to the table. Let's dive into these units and see what makes them tick, and why they might be a little less reliable than their higher tier counterparts. First up is Karem Chilled. This unit is all about crowd control, offering freeze and damage over time and DOT effects to slow down enemies and keep them under control. Sounds awesome, right? The only issue is that its AoE abilities are pretty much useless unless enemies are already burned. So it's dependent on other units or conditions to trigger its effects. That makes Karem a bit hit or miss because if the enemies aren't burning, you're not getting the full potential of the freeze and DOT. Still, when everything aligns, it can really shut down waves of enemies. Next, we've got Okoron Turbo, a unit that can dish out a massive damage boost through its turbo transformation. When it's in turbo mode, it's a beast, but there's a big downside. Okoron suffers heavy Esper penalties, which slow down its attack speed. So while it can hit hard, it also takes its sweet time between attacks. Additionally, it can't increase its damage reduction unless it lands successive attacks. If you're looking for consistent damage, Okoron might not be your best bet. It's a bit too reliant on stacking hits and overcoming those SCPA penalties. Zion Burdalion is up next, and it's another unit that applies burn effects to boost overall DPS. The idea is solid. Burning enemies lets it do more damage over time. But here's the problem. Its effectiveness really depends on enemies staying burned. If they're not staying on fire, the DPS boost just isn't there. It's a fun concept, but like the other burn-focused units, it can fall flat if the conditions aren't met. Still, when everything clicks, Zion can definitely add some consistent burn damage to your team. Moving on to Psycho Spirit Medium, which gets bonus damage against bosses. That's awesome for high priority targets, right? The catch is that it applies burn effects that reduce SPA, slowing down its attack speed. While the bonus damage is great for taking down bosses, it's not going to be as effective against regular enemies. Plus, if you need to deal with fast-moving targets, you might find that the attack speed slowdown becomes a real problem. Still, if you've got a boss to handle, Psycho can be a solid pick. Puini Boxer is a unit that stacks damage with each attack, making it reliable for steadily increasing its power. The problem? It suffers regular SPA drops, which can mess with its overall DPS. It relies on continuous attacks to maximize its damage output, but those attack speed reductions can make it feel inconsistent at times. If you can maintain those attacks though, Puini Boxer can bring some solid damage over time. Just be ready for the occasional slowdown. Next, let's talk about Janus, who inflicts consistent burn damage for sustained DPS. Sounds nice, right? The problem is that Janus suffers from the same SPA reduction issues as the other burn-focused units. This means its attacks slow down as it stacks damage, making it harder to keep up the pressure over time. If you can work around the SPA penalties, Janus can deliver decent sustained DPS, but it's going to require some careful timing and the placement to make it work. Then there's Zenitsu, who can inflict explosive burst damage every 8th hit. While the burst is nice, Zenitsu's overall stats are pretty average, which makes it hard to rely on it consistently. It's a cool concept, but compared to other units in the epic category, there are better options out there. The burst damage is fun, but it's just not enough to make Zenitsu a standout choice in your lineup. Finally, we've got Inosake, a unit that boosts its damage and reduces SPA after kills. The catch here is that these boosts are delayed until enough kills are achieved. So, if you're facing fast-moving enemies, it could be a while before Inosake starts delivering its full potential. Its bleed effect is also less effective against quicker targets, meaning you might struggle if you're up against speedy enemies. If you can give Inosake some time to ramp up though, it can definitely pack a punch. And last but not least, we've got Kakashi, who guarantees a stun and a damage boost every 8 seconds. The stun is great for crowd control, and the damage boost can be nice too. However, the boost duration is short, so it's tough to rely on Kakashi for long stretches of time. You really need to time it well to capitalize on the stun and damage boost, making it a more skill-based unit. It's fun to use, but it's not going to carry your team on its own. Lastly, Piclio is all about getting a powerful damage spike every 6th hit. The problem is that the damage spike is short-lived and not permanent, making it less viable in the later stages of the game. It's fun for a while, but once things get tougher, you might find yourself wishing for a more consistent unit. So, there you have it. The C-tier units in Anime Vanguards. These guys can still shine in the right circumstances, but they all have their limitations. If you're looking to experiment and have a bit of fun, they might be worth trying out, but don't expect them to carry you through the toughest battles. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Agony, Alligator, Bean, Blossom, Dodara Explosive, Emi, Fuboko, Jiro Ballbreaker, Goi, Grimwow, Inamuki, Ishtar Divinity, Itochi, Johnny Infinite Spin, Kinaru, Kinua, Medea Witcher of Betrayal, Nezuka, Pueni Yusri Aoshui Pueni, and Valentine Love Train. Alright, let's dive into some of the B tier units in Anime Vanguards. These units are pretty solid, but they've got their own quirks that prevent them from being the absolute top tier. They bring unique abilities to the table, and if you use them right, they can be total game changers in certain situations. Let's go through them and see what makes them tick. Starting off, we've got the Valentine Love Train. This unit is all about building up power over time. The more hits it lands, the more its damage and range increase. It's a slow burn, but once it hits its full potential, it's a powerhouse. Plus, it grants immunity to status ailments, which is a huge bonus in tough battles. The catch? It requires a lot of hits to stack up, so you'll need to be patient to really see those big numbers. Next, let's talk about the Dodara Explosive. This unit is all about crowd control as it consistently stuns enemies with every attack. As it stuns more enemies, its damage increases incrementally, which can be incredibly useful for locking down multiple foes at once. The downside? After using its special ability, Dodara self-stuns, which can throw off your momentum. But if you time it right, this can be an awesome tool for shutting down enemies. Now, let's look at Johnny Infinite Spin. This one's a little trickier to get going, but once it does, it can dish out some serious damage. After landing multiple attacks, Johnny builds up bonus DPS and SPA, and once it activates its Infinite Spin ability, it gets a continuous damage boost. The only thing to watch out for is the initial SPA reduction, which makes it weaker early on. But once it's rolling, this unit can go all out. Moving on to Ishtar Divinity, a unit that really shines with a little teamwork. It gains incremental damage with each successive attack, and it hits all enemies in range with a powerful AoE ability. The problem though is that its effectiveness relies heavily on other Fate units being in play, so if you're not running a team with Fate synergy, this unit might not perform at its best, but when paired right, it can wreak havoc. Then we've got Medea Witch of Betrayal, and wow, this one is a force when it comes to clearing out enemy formations. Medea deals bonus damage when enemies are nullified, making her super effective against certain types of enemies. But the catch? The SPA reduction with each attack can limit her overall DPS. So, while she can deal massive bursts of damage, she's not the most consistent over a long period. Let's talk about Jiro Ball Breaker, which is all about AoE damage and crowd control. This unit drops steel balls that deal consistent AoE damage over time, while also reducing enemy status durations and providing some solid crowd control. The big downside is that Jiro really only becomes fully effective after you've upgraded it enough, so you'll need to be patient for it to hit its stride. Next up is Alligator, a unit that's great for slowing enemies down. With a 50% movement debuff for 3 seconds, it's all about controlling the battlefield and buying you time to deal with tougher enemies. But Alligator lacks high offensive DPS, so while it's great for crowd control, it won't be helping much with taking down big bosses or powerful enemies. Finally, let's talk about Agony. This unit offers strong support with its knockback ability, and it boosts its damage and range after knocking enemies back. The problem is that its effects are temporary, meaning you'll need to trigger them frequently to keep the bonuses going. It's a good unit for adding some support to your team, but it's not going to be the main damage dealer. These B-tier units are all about finding the right situation for them, whether it's the slow burn power of Valentine Love Train or the AoE crowd control of Jiro Ball Breaker. They all have their niches. They might not be the heavy hitters, but with the right strategy, they can definitely hold their own and make a big impact on the battlefield. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Akazo, Chain, An, Dave, Emi Ice Witch, Fuboko Hellish, Gilgamesh, King of Heroes, Igros, Ace Taduri, Lilia and Berserker, Lute, Medusa Gorgon, Mohato, Naruto Sixtails, Obita Awakened, Queni Boxer, Rengoku, Roku Dark, Sasuke Hebi, Sukono, Tengon, Vegeta Super Awakened. Alright, buckle up because we're about to dive into the top tier units in Anime Vanguards, the A tier. These units are the ones you'll want to build your strategy around. They've got the raw power, unique abilities, and versatility to really make an impact on the battlefield. But don't be fooled. While they're solid, they still have their quirks and situations where they really shine. Let's break down these powerhouse units and what makes them so special. First up, we've got Igros Elite Knight. This unit is an absolute beast when it comes to dealing with enemy groups. With massive AoE, area of effect damage, it can clear waves like nobody's business. Not only that, but its DPS against enemy waves is solid, making it a strong pick for both offense and defense. Whether you're facing off against a bunch of smaller enemies or tackling a big group of tough ones, Igros is a solid choice that can really hold its ground. It's an all-around powerhouse that works in pretty much any situation. Then there's Akazo Destructive, a unit that's perfect for boss battles. Akazo is immune to status effects, which means it can keep attacking non-stop without worrying about being slowed, stunned, or frozen. Its single target damage is consistent and high, making it an excellent choice for taking down those tough bosses that need constant pressure. If you're facing a big bad boss, Akazo's your go-to guy. It'll shred through the boss's health in no time. Next up, we have Cha-In Blade Dancer, and if you love a unit with high burst potential, this is the one for you. Blade Dancer boosts critical hit chance, which means extra damage when those crits land. Its high burst damage is perfect for taking down single targets quickly, and the low cooldown makes it a consistent source of DPS. If you need a unit that can deal with high priority targets fast, this is your dancer. Just keep an eye on its targets and you'll see its potential unfold. Tengon flashiness brings some serious crowd control to the table. With its multi-target attacks, it can deal with large groups of enemies easily. Plus, it increases its attack speed, which boosts overall DPS. What makes Tengon really stand out though is its ability to enhance your team's damage output quickly. If you've got a lot of enemies coming at you, Tengon's the unit that'll make sure they don't stand a chance. It's all about fast-paced, high-volume damage, and this unit nails it. Moving on to Rengoku Purgatory, which is the burn master of the A tier. Rengoku's powerful burn effect doubles its damage over time, making it extremely effective against enemy waves. The longer enemies stay in range, the more damage they take, and Rengoku excels in sustained DPS. This unit is fantastic for grinding down bosses over time as well. If you've got a tough enemy that you need to wear down, Rengoku is your best friend, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. Then, we've got Naruto Six Tails. This unit starts with solid base stats and gets even better the more it attacks, stacking its damage over time. It's not the most amazing mythic unit out there, but it does its job well in the mid-game. The more attacks it lands, the higher its DPS goes, making it an awesome unit for those longer battles. It's not the top of the A tier, but it can definitely hold its own in the right setups. Next, Obita Awakened shows up with some serious high tier potential. This unit deals massive damage, and it's particularly good in long battles where you need reliable burn effects to keep enemies on their toes. It might get outclassed by S tier options eventually, but until then, Obita's a beast that can handle a lot of damage over time. Pair it with other strong units, and it's an excellent choice for lengthy fights. Let's not forget about Sasuke Hebi. This unit excels in DPS through consecutive attacks. The more attacks it lands, the more damage it dishes out, and it can be incredibly effective in a variety of setups. The catch? It relies on keeping those attack chains uninterrupted, so positioning and timing are crucial. But when it's firing on all cylinders, Hebi will melt through enemies like it's nothing. So, there you have it. The A tier units that dominate in Anime Vanguards. These units are all about bringing that extra oomph to your team. Whether it's massive AoE damage, high single target DPS, or sustained burn effects, these units have everything you need to win. Just be mindful of their quirks and pick the right one for the job, and you'll see them do some serious damage on the battlefield. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Alucard Vampire King, Chasso Blood Curse, Dave Cyber Psycho, Diogo Alternate, Divalo Requiem, Gujo Infinity, Haruka Rin Dancer, Is Dead Romantic, Jago Volcanic, Julius Iceplosion, Legendary Super Brolzy, Lucy Hacker, Mechama, Regnal Rage, Rajita, Super 4, Roma and Ran Fanatic, Saber Black Tyrant, Saburo Contract, Song Jinwoo Monarch, Song Jinwoo, and Igros, Sasuke Storm, Sprint Wagon, Todu Unleashed, and 2G Sorcerer Schiller. Alright, let's talk about the big dogs, the S tier units in Anime Vanguards. These are the heavy hitters, the ones you'll want to rely on when the going gets tough. They're not just good, they're game changers. So if you've been eyeing these units, or if you're just curious about how they perform, grab a seat because we're diving in. First, we have Alucard Vampire King. This guy is all about inflicting that sweet bleed damage over time. If you're in for a long battle, Alucard is your man, providing sustained DPS that will slowly chip away at your enemies. He's got fantastic synergy with other debuffs too, so if you've got a setup that's all about weakening your foes, Alucard fits in perfectly. Just be ready for his high bleed damage to show those enemies that they messed with the wrong Vampire King. Next, let's talk about Divalo Requiem. If you're facing off against bosses, Divalo is an absolute must-have. He boosts damage when bosses are around, which is a nice touch, but it gets even better. Divalo increases DPS for every slowed enemy, and with his ability to slow all enemies after activation, he's a crowd controller's dream. He also has guaranteed dodges, meaning he's pretty slippery and tough to hit. You'll want him in your corner during those boss fights. Then, there's Haruka Rin Dancer, and wow, this unit really knows how to keep the enemy at bay. With exceptional long-range capabilities, she can engage enemies before they even reach your towers. Her consistent support for other units makes her a valuable asset for holding the line and keeping things under control. Haruka may not be the flashiest, but her consistent damage and ability to control the battlefield in the early and mid game are crucial. If you're looking for a bit of crowd control with the side of debuffs, Sasuke Storm should be on your radar. Sasuke's stuns and crowd control abilities are perfect for disrupting enemy movement, giving your other units a chance to do some serious damage. He provides excellent support for DPS units, allowing them to focus on tearing down enemies without worrying about getting overwhelmed. If you're dealing with large groups, Sasuke's your guy. On the other hand, Diogo Alternate is all about consistency. His DPS output is reliable for sustained defense, and he's great at targeting high-value enemies. But what really sets him apart is his bonus damage against bosses. If you want a dependable unit to help you hold off those tough bosses, Diogo Alternate will be there to back you up, delivering steady damage and ensuring that nothing gets past you. Let's not forget about Saburo Contract, the ultimate support unit. Saburo buffs nearby units, increasing their damage, and can even extend the range of your towers. This synergy is what really makes him shine. He's not just a passive unit, he actively strengthens your defenses. Whether you're preparing for a tough wave or trying to boost your army's damage, Saburo is there to back you up. Another standout is Chaso Blood Curse, who specializes in bleed damage. Chaso inflicts serious bleeding effects that provide sustained DPS over time, and he's great for crowd control as well. Debuffing mobs with bleed damage can really change the tide of battle, especially when combined with his strong damage output against bosses. If you're facing off against those huge, scary enemies, Chaso is the one you want to lead the charge. And last but certainly not least, Saber Black Tyrant. This unit is a force to be reckoned with. He creates an aura that slows down enemy progress, which is huge when dealing with larger waves. Not only that, but he boosts the damage of allied units within his aura. He's absolutely essential for controlling those intense boss waves. Saber Black Tyrant is that reliable go-to unit who will turn the tide in those critical moments. So there you have it. These S-tier units are the real deal. Whether you need bleed damage, crowd control, or someone to hold the line against bosses, these units have your back. They all come with their own unique strengths, and when used together, they form an unstoppable team. If you've got these units in your arsenal, you're ready to take on anything Anime Vanguards throws your way. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.